cholesterol levels, and that's good for your heart. Here's a winning idea. Take up the challenge for good health, because the you of the future will say,
fantastic!
Learn more at heart.org/facethefats. Canola Info proudly supports the American Heart Association's Face the Fats campaign.
It's one thing to be aware of breast cancer. It's another to do something about it. Here's to the heroes who make pink so much more than a color. Act, donate, get involved at komen.org/morethanpink.
Talk 1470 is WWNN Pompano Beach and 95.3 FM W237BD Boca Raton, the Health and Wealth Radio Network.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. My name is Ricky Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. Ooh, little reverb.
Yeah, a little feedbacky in here. How are you, my brother?
Good, good. Once again, great to be with you on a Monday night.
Yes. What better thing to do on a Monday night than talk about sex?
Oh, I could watch reruns of Gilligan's Island.
Oh, my God. Date yourself, why don't you? Thank you for joining us. If you're listening on the radio in South Florida, we are on 95.3 FM and 1470 AM WNN. Feel free to jot down this number, 888-565-1470. Or if you are watching us live streaming on Facebook, please feel free to hit that send email button and send us a note with a question, your thoughts, comments.
And if anybody wants to call in, do so in the next 10 minutes, because we are going to have a guest.
We have a guest, very excited.
That's going to take up the phone line.
One of our favorite people is going to be calling in a few minutes.
Right, so if anybody does want to have a question or a comment they want to make via telephone, do it sooner rather than later, or, of course, anything posted on Facebook we will certainly follow up with.
Absolutely. We'll reply or make it a topic for our next show. But let me just get some plugs out of the way. I want to talk about Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, and the endeavor I am very, very proud to be directing with my dear business partner, Dr. Rachel Needle, who you've known since she was just a wee
child.
A child. West Palm Beach psychologist and co-director. Modern Sex Therapy Institutes trains medical and mental health professionals in sex therapy and sexuality counseling, sexual medicine, all of which continue to need to be integrated. As our dear friend and early mentor Marilyn Volker has always said, we need the dream team. We need to get people together. We need sex therapists and gynecologists' offices and urologists' offices and endocrinologists and oncologists and cardiologists across the board. Remember when a friend of ours came to us for some advice who was getting a tummy tuck? And we searched and searched and searched. Google's supposed to know everything. We searched millions and millions of hits, and there was like nothing on the internet about sexuality and bariatric procedures and all these tummy tucks. And like, you'd think there might be some connections between body image and self-esteem and what motivates people to go through these tremendous changes.
Well, sure, but
nobody talks about sex.
Well, and especially in this particular case, because, I mean, you're talking about so much of medical practitioners, or so many medical practitioners operate under assumption and, just their sort of rhetorical views. And plastic surgeons are probably more notorious for having the idea that is once you change the body, your self-esteem will go up, your sexuality will be open. It's the panacea, it's the big fix-all. So they don't need to talk about it because everything that is holding you back as a person will be released and resolved if you have the bariatric surgery or you have breast implants
and you'll
or
wake up
you
the
have
next morning,
labioplasty.
you'll wake up from surgery like a supermodel.
That's right.
But
All
there
of a
won't
sudden,
be multiple surgeries down the road. And
hey, but even if there are, you know what? I did this surgery. I did this for myself. I automatically feel sexy.
You know, I bet that's why people get, like those crazy rich people get addicted to plastic surgery. And just keep over and over, like just this, not just this. Just as soon as I fix my ears, then I'll be right. And it just
I think it may be chasing, sort of chasing a different kind of dragon.
They don't even look human anymore.
Well, well, for too many of them, too many facelifts and eye tucks, they just walk around looking surprised all the time.
Right. Botox, just that frozen mask of.
But again, I think sort of chasing this sense of validation, chasing this, I'm supposed to feel good. Now, maybe this one will make me feel good, or maybe that one will make me feel good. Just kind of like a one last shot kind of thing, or like I have to say, like somebody like who smokes crack, that chasing the virgin high. They know that this rock is going to be the one that does it for them. It's going to give them that feeling. Then it doesn't. But the next one's going to be the one that does it, and it doesn't. But the next one is going to be, and on and on and on until they're kind of stuck. And I think people with the plastic surgery often get into that kind of mode.
But the fact that nobody's talking about it, especially on the professional side, on the clinician side, if nobody talks about it, then it just fuels all of this anxiety around it.
Right.
And it never gets addressed.
Absolutely. So, hey, Chris Donahue and Amanda and some of the other people that we know that are on shows and we're working with shows like The Doctors, start talking about that stuff. Bring it up.
Yeah. Really, it's shameful the way the entire medical profession, including pee-pee doctors, avoid talking about sex.
Oh, well, that's been a bone of contention that we've had for years.
Psychotherapists, psychologists, nobody except these weird sex therapists. And still, it's like 2018. And still there's this idea that there's these weird therapists, that these renegades, where sex comes first. That was the title of, remember that New York Times article? Sex comes first for these renegades of couples therapy. What? Well, how could you be, like we say all the time, you're a couples therapist and you don't talk about sex? Well, you're the weird one.
Well, exactly. And the fact that these were marriage and family therapists who actually did talk about sex, that was newsworthy.
Right. In 2015 when that was going on. But still, it's like how long does it take to get some momentum to just recognize how willfully ignorant we remain?
Well, because again, it's easier to perpetuate the assumptions.
Right.
It's just easier to let things ride. Again, 2018. And granted, there are a lot of guys that have, including the people that are in power, that have continued to sort of legitimize this assumption. But how many people just automatically assume that male sexuality, male sexual behavior is inherently predatory?
Huh.
Okay? And that just keeps on going.
Yeah.
Right? Now, granted, there are enough guys that do seem to validate that, but that's not most of us.
Well, yeah, we have to look at the script. That's part of it. Guys get the message growing up that you got to get some. You got to get. You're not a real man till you put your tag on.
Yeah, exactly. And as we talk about, again, men being good lovers, part of it is getting out of, first of all, that mechanistic way of thinking about tools and machines and that kind of, piston-like functioning.
Like we were talking last week.
Right, exactly. And get more into understanding their body, understanding that there are responses and reactions emotionally and physically of their partner. That it's important that when we are with somebody, that we are contributing to their good feelings, their pleasures and eroticism.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I think Esther Perel, since you mentioned that that Renegade article, she was one of the ones featured in that.
Yeah.
she either wrote or said, I don't remember if I read it from her or heard it from her, but was talking about that sense for a lot of guys of whether or not they're there to get themselves off or they're there to be, and that they're interested and concerned about their partner's pleasure and their partner's feelings, that very often that right there is the kind of that line between eroticism and violence.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. But see, if guys would get out of their head, and this is why I'm so glad that we're going to be talking with Melissa this evening, because she's become an expert in this. It's the anxiety that's just ever present for almost everybody, and especially guys, because of that, because there's so much on the line with every sexual encounter, that not only is the horny predator excited, but the anxious performer is on. And so there's this, instead of focusing on his partner's pleasure and getting off on that, which every guy would you can't argue with that, right? Instead, the anxiety and the work performance thing is, I have to be good enough and last long enough. And okay, great, we got Melissa joining us.
Yeah, but I want to say something about that, because I think that also sets the stage for a lot of the problematic behavior. That on the one hand, if we just look at it on the surface and say that a guy being that concerned and being that, I think, connected to their partner's pleasure, that's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, that is definitely what we encourage. But if that's something that a guy needs for his own validation,
I'm not talking about validation.
No, but a lot of these guys that on the surface seem to be just focused on getting their partner off before they do. On the surface, it seems like that's generous. But if they need that in order for their ego and their sexual self, when they don't get that, that's when it can often turn violent.
Right. That's a topic in its own right for another night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Melissa, you with us?
Here.
Hey
there.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. You opted for calling in tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm really happy to have you. Thanks, and thanks for staying up late. I know you just came back from a whirlwind,
quite
European
the travels.
adventure.
Yeah.
So, there you are. You did
hello,
video.
wonderful. It's so beautiful, love.
Wow.
How's Stuart?
So sleepy. I'm so tired.
A little jet lag.
I totally forgot. I just was working today, and I thought, okay, I'm just working. It's fine. And then you asked, and so
then face
plant. And then I thought, wait a second, I go to bed right now at 7 p.m. We went to bed at 7:30 last night. So.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, thanks for making the sacrifice.
Yeah.
For our
so good to see you.
The price we pay for getting to talk about sex all the time.
I mean, there could be worse things.
That's right.
That's true. That's
so
true.
You look marvelous. We're thrilled to see you.
Thanks.
As usual.
And you're definitely one of my favorite human beings. And we were just, kind of kicking it around, and what always seems to come up, better, us well, right? So you're the last one to be surprised that this thing fell in our laps and these dudes end up talking about sex and male issues and male responsibility and how sexual violence prevention and all of these are men's issues. But you, my dear, Melissa, let me just give a little intro, a little background. Melissa was actually my first intern when I was a wee little supervisor, and she came down from Missouri to finish. See, notice, did you catch? I said Missouri.
I wasn't going to let that go.
And came to Florida to finish her graduate program, and I had the pleasure of working with her at Planned Parenthood. And she was a star in the making. So you have since found your niche as an expert, even rising to the level of brilliant presenter and trainer of other therapists in the arena, especially in a lot of areas of sex therapy, but especially most critically what we talk a lot about, men and anxiety and sexual dysfunction. And we talk about how while there's this kind of horny, ooh, gimme side, there's also this, we're on now, and every sexual encounter represents a performance with a list of things that must be checked off to make a good lover. So we also like to, when we have female colleagues, especially brilliant therapists such as yourself, to kind of banter around this idea of boy brain, girl brain, and get a woman's perspective on us Y chromosome carriers, and you know. So how did you tell us first how you got into honing this expertise in anxiety with sexual dysfunction in men?
Oh, it kind of, I mean, just like the internship with you, it sort of fell into place really naturally, right? I mean, we met at a conference. I met both of you at a conference, and after you gave me some rocky road, I asked about an internship.
I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah, I did not. And so I knew that I really wanted to be a good therapist, and I knew I really wanted to do sex therapy, and I sort of had this idea that I would work with women and helping them find their sexuality, and young women. I think a lot of therapists, at least in the students I teach, a lot of them really sort of their ideal client is really themselves in the beginning. Mm. And I think that's just, you know, because you can't really imagine anything else, right? And so I knew that my school wasn't enough to be a good therapist. The fabulous internship at Planned Parenthood gave me a lot of great experience for 6 months, but I still knew that I needed more. And so that was something that was really important to me. And but I also needed to eat. So I found various jobs and did those. And then when I moved to Chicago, after working in the public sector a bit, I found a fellowship that helped train me in particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, which really resonated with just the way that I think about people and mental health. And so that training, and then of course they just would give me any time a client mentioned sex, they were like, oh, we have someone, you know, you take them all, which was great. And, you know, not really surprisingly, I think there were a lot of men in particular that really resonated also with the cognitive behavioral modality, in that it's a very, the idea is that we provide a lot more structure, it feels very problem-solving focused, which men are in our culture often encouraged to do much more than, you know, kind of emotional unloading, and so it feels a little less scary. So I think that drew a bunch of men in, and then that was also kind of during the porn panic. Tiger Woods scenario was happening, and so I think there's a lot of people that were really struggling with, what am I doing, and feeling out of control. And so I started working with those individuals, and I think stylistically how I present myself and how I conceptualize cases really resonated with a lot of men, and that's kind of how it happened. I never really marketed to that.
They found you.
Yeah, I really loved anxiety, and
what a strange statement to make.
Yeah.
I really love anxiety.
Even depression. Depression is hard, and so is anxiety. But I just find that I treat that a lot easier. So, or at least I can relate it a little bit easier, and so I'm more effective.
I want to jump off on one of the points that you're talking about, and especially not only as a therapist, but also as a woman. When you said something I think was pretty important, that men generally have this sort of problem-solving just way of being.
Yeah.
How does that manifest in the sexual problems that you see in a lot of men?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I think that for a lot of men, so anxiety kind of manifests its way in that in that sort of mentality of like, there must be a problem, so I must solve it, right? And so I think that that sort of mindset where anxiety is being cultivated, and most of the people that I see for performance-related anxiety, and actually a lot of them are not even clinically significant in terms of their actual sexual dysfunction diagnosis. They're typically
they just think
really
they're
anxious
a mess.
about,
Right.
So they think they're a premature ejaculator, even though they're not, or they worry. And so worry is really manifested a lot for these guys in a lot of activation.
The self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think that kind of what at least shows up in my office is they very much, and for most of my anxiety people, they just want to know the answer. Right? Anxiety says, just tell me the answer.
Like they walk right in. How many sessions is it going to take to fix this?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so,
Slow
and I get
your
that.
roll.
You know, everything, and which is exactly what they're coming in for, is that they can't slow down.
Right.
So,
Right.
and so we're really trying to challenge everything in their being that is saying go, 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 fast, fast, fast. And whether that be sexually, even in sexual encounters, you know, a lot of these individuals are high performers just in general. So they're used to being really efficient with their time, and even their masturbation often is like, let's do it. Let's move on.
And that's for a lot of guys to get into that setup. It starts really early in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys who grow up with lots of people in the house, and you know, the only privacy they can get is 3 minutes in the bathroom with people banging on the door. Hey, what are you doing in there? It's my turn. It's my turn. They get real quick at going 0 to 60 in 60.
Sure. But you know, we also talk a lot about performance anxiety with men, yet performance anxiety is an issue and a problem for a lot of women as well. Is there, you know, when we look at the anxiety-based, you know, issues around sexual performance, is there a difference between men and women? How we kind of look at that anxiety? Is women's anxiety more about themselves? Is men's anxiety more about what they're doing? I mean, is there a difference in performance anxiety between men and women that you've seen and worked with?
So I think that culturally, we kind of have to step back and realize that culturally, this is one of the biggest problems in kind of the established patriarchy, is that it puts all the pressure and onus on the men. And in some ways that's beneficial, because men can often externalize the issue. And so they don't necessarily, I find that women, when they worry about their sexual self, it's very internal. It never really goes about as much as the partner being the problem. That doesn't say that doesn't happen, and there can be lots of different types of critical partners, and you know, but in our culture, men are sort of told, and women, you know, especially in the heterosexual realm, are told, you are the man, the penis is responsible for unlocking everything.
Right.
You know, it's going to make you have like crazy orgasms. And the difference is that, you know, the way I always joke that, particularly for my men, one of the things we talk about is, you know, the way that they like their penis touched as this sort of outy apparatus is not necessarily the way you would want something touched on the inside.
Right.
And so that's another
that's
thing,
good.
you know, like you want to
don't handle my prostate the same way.
You know, and so you're kind of explaining to them, like, you know, how you'd want to be stroked on your arm is not how you'd want something in your mouth.
Right.
You know, and so trying to help them understand too that I think a lot of times guys, the only thing they have to go off of is either porn, which is just like watching the Olympics and trying to figure out how to play a sport at the Olympic level,
right? Or
they have themselves, right? We all do it. We all are like, oh, well, this is what I like, so you must like that. And it's like, maybe not, you know. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, some people might not like some orifices banged in the same way, but a lot of people need, and a lot of vagina owners really need sort of a slower buildup and really take a little bit longer for, I mean, we have to have our cervix aligned and our uterus and all of this has to tilt and swell and do things, you know, and it's...
Sure. Well, that's just for the physical stuff. right? Because that's actually all secondary, as we know, to the mental and emotional stuff.
And we've been talking the past couple of weeks a lot about clitorises.
Yeah.
That, and Larry's clitoris in Denver when he won a raffle from one of the exhibitors and got that beautiful 3D printed clitoris.
I love
and while it was the greatest conversation starter ever to be set on a bar, I was struck that not a single person could identify it.
Right.
No women,
male
no
or
men,
female.
No one. Oh, that's a clitoris.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, and
like
you know that
phone or something.
Yeah.
And
you know, and that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that I think that the other problem. So one of the issues with the patriarchy is that it puts all this pressure on men, and it really silences women to be able to talk to their partners.
Right.
It also and so it keeps kind of the status quo, but it puts pressure on both individuals. It makes men have to sort of fit in a box just as much as we kind of make women have to fit in a box, right? It really puts these genders in a box. So men can't really talk about the emotional experience. I always talk to them about your penis is your friend. Your penis is trying to communicate with you. And, it's trying to say like, hey, I feel really badly. It's not surprising to me that for a lot of guys with erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation or even worry about that, they've often encountered some critical partners. And in fact, they may themselves be very critical partners. And so really talking to them about that emotional dynamic and trying to open that conversation up a little bit more, I think is pretty important. Emotional well-being, I always talk about, in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, we talk about the emotion mind and the, rational mind. And in our culture, we really, we idealize the rational mind, but the rational mind is garbage in a lot of ways. The rational mind is like a robot, it's like the Spock. And then you have the emotional mind, which is, impulsive, but also passionate and exciting. And that's your Captain Kirk. And not many people want to have sex with Spock. Most people are like, Kirk does it for me. And talking to the men about, you've got to, and any rom-com, any romantic movie they've ever seen.
Right.
At the point of the romance and the connection, right, is the moment that the bad boy becomes vulnerable and opens up, only to her or whatever. I don't know, but it's like there's just this really confining idea about emotionality for men that I think really stifles them in a lot of ways too.
Definitely.
Well, I think especially heterosexual men, because a lot of that dynamic, I think, is especially in relation to women.
Yeah.
A lot of guys that are, again, the stuff that I was doing with the hetero flexibility and that sexual fluidity, a lot of guys will hook up with other guys and basically put themselves in a very passive position and will say things like they can do that, they can give up control to another guy, but they cannot do that to a woman. They cannot make themselves that vulnerable to a woman. I mean, which is really kind of sad.
I don't know, though. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a female therapist, but I actually believe that, and I mean, most men say that they feel more comfortable being vulnerable or doing therapy with a female because of that safety.
I get that.
But that's more the gentle, nurturing part of it. The sexual part of it, I think, is a little bit different.
How about the dom?
Well, I mean, I think in turn, it depends. I'm talking about these guys that specifically hook up with other men in a way that they can only make themselves vulnerable to men.
I know.
Right? Again, there's a lot of these different dynamics.
But we got the 2-minute warning a minute ago already. I hate how fast
I know
this half hour flies by.
Yeah.
We'll have to continue this conversation. Oh, and he's playing the music already, so that's...
okay.
You know what the music means.
You know what the music means. We love you. Thank you for calling in, Melissa.
So much
it's really great to see you.
For being great
Hope
to
see you in Chicago real soon.
Yes,
and back here in sunny Boca Raton, we will wrap it up and say goodnight. And thank you again for joining us. And please join us again next Monday and every Monday at 9 o'clock for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
Right. And please like and share. Have a great week.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily